Just Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, and I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Oh, celebrate life. Oh, celebrate life.
For as long as there have been babies born into this world, mankind has wondered about how life begins and develops in the womb.
This is your bladder, and this is your baby right here. He's jumping for you. Look at him.
Wow, I can't believe how developed he is. Look at him move.
Yeah, he's been well developed since 8 weeks. He's had all his parts. Look at him. Oh,
How come I can't feel that?
You won't until the 4th month, but he's been moving in there since 8 weeks. He's got a whole lot of room in the womb to move, and with all that fluid, they're able to move around, do somersaults. You know, look at him. Do you believe it? You're going to have your hands full, girl. Look at that.
The birth of a human life occurs at the moment of conception, when the mother's egg or ovum is fertilized by one of the father's sperm. During this act of conception, the two cells become a single living cell, a unique individual who never existed before in history and will never be duplicated again. Its heart begins to beat on about day 18.
This is an image of just 4 weeks. Can you see the heart beating? Listen to the Doppler of that heart.
They decided to create an environment where they would convince the blacks to severely limit the number of children they were going to have and thereby commit race suicide.
We have now reached a point in this country that the abortion industry at this point kills as many African American people every 4 days as the Klan killed in 150 years. And you can truly say the most dangerous place for an African American to be is in the womb of their African American mother.
Hello everyone, welcome to Love Them Both. This is a unique talk show on abortion, the sacredness of human life, on moral and constitutional issues, and the moral crisis of our time. Our show today is straight from the horse's mouth. This is a part 1 of a series of shows on Islam from the inside information provided by former Islamic scholars themselves. People who are on the inside and know how Islam actually works. And they show us that Islam's doctrines are, in fact, strategies and tactics of insurrection and world conquest. But first, I'll show the authority behind the biblical worldview of absolute truth. If you are pregnant and scared, be sure to keep a pencil and paper handy today and write down the nationwide pregnancy health line that you'll see, HELP, on the screen. With that number, you can be connected with free and qualified counselors and help anywhere in the nation. Also, you don't have to have an abortion, and you can also find help dealing with the pain of an abortion, past abortion, and also information about adoption, the caring option, alternative, and option. If you are pregnant and if you are being enslaved, if you know someone who's being held in bondage, either in sex slavery or in labor, be sure to write down and remember the Health and Human Services Trafficking Hotline that you'll see on our screen. This is an easy number to construct from memory because it's basically centered on the number 3737, a double 37. If you remember that at the core, heart of the number, 3737, then just add the toll-free prefix, 888 at the beginning, and 888 at the end, and you can construct easily this number from memory. If you know someone who's enslaved and you call that number, they can help direct you onto how to proceed to help that person. If someone's life is in danger, you should call the local police, and you can also call the FBI, the local FBI too. So be sure to be willing to help other people. I said that the moral crisis of our time is reaching biblical proportions. What that means is that our sins as individuals and collectively as a nation are getting so bad that it's like the Bible stories in the Bible where we're in line for God's judgment. And I strongly suspect that the increasing violence we see in our society, the increasing, the nearly overthrow of our government by the socialists, liberals, and Democrats on the one hand, and the onslaught of Islamic pressure coming into the United States. And I suspect that this is God's judgment beginning on us. If we do not want to have a nation under God, if we do not want to honor His 10 Commandments and His institutions of marriage, and we want to have gay marriage instead, or living together without marriage, if we want to dishonor His institutions of marriage, flaunt His laws, if we want to continue to have infanticide as abortion, then He is going to give us over to what we want. I've spoken with atheists. Atheists, are people who don't believe God exists, and there are agnostics who are not sure God exists. And these are some of the saddest situations to be in, because these individuals are denying themselves the most important truths of life. Where did we come from? Why are we here, and where are we going? If you are an atheist and an agnostic, you cannot answer these questions. So there are at least 6 or 7 ways to prove that God exists. But I have to say that a person convinced against their will be of the same opinion still. You have to be open-minded if you're an atheist. You have to want to lean toward favor of wanting to find God, or you won't see it in the evidence, and it'll be a great tragedy that this most important truth of life and the meaning of your life is passing you by. The first way, most obvious way to prove God exists is the creation itself. There is design in creation. Like a Swiss watch, if you see a finely tuned, finely made Swiss watch, you think, there's a watchmaker around here somewhere. If you, likewise with the creation, there's tons of design in creation and in ingenuity. Where did it come from? There must be a watchmaker around here somewhere. Then there's the proof of answered prayer. But if you are an unbeliever, if you're an atheist or an agnostic, you may never pray, and if you don't, you won't get an answered prayer. So you won't be able to discover that proof. There is the proof of changed lives. People who were drug addicts, prostitutes, when they turned to Jesus Christ and surrendered to Him to follow Him in repentance, He raised them up and changed their lives, and they're very useful and successful people today. Those internal miracles are undeniable proof. Those internal changes, miraculous changes, are undeniable proof. A proof that I'm going to introduce here briefly is biblical prophecy. This is, in our world, which is so prejudiced against God in the Bible, biblical prophecy is overlooked. And he also prophesied the outline of world history in advance. An example of prophecy is that in the book of Daniel, written 700 BC, prophesied the outline of the world empires that would be rolling over Jerusalem and the Middle East, all the way down through our time and up until the second coming of Jesus Christ. Daniel wrote the prophecies. Saw the visions, wrote the prophecies in the 7th century during the Babylonian Empire, and he foretold that following the Babylonian Empire would be succeeded by an empire of the Medes and the Persians, and that was Medes and the Persians, and that was fulfilled in what we call the Persian Empire in secular history. And then in turn, there would be an empire. The Persian Empire would be followed by an empire of the Greeks and the Macedonians that would divide into 4 subdivisions. This was fulfilled 300 or so years later by Alexander the Great, who died as emperor of Greece, but he had left no heir, so his kingdom, the Greek kingdom, was divided among his 4 generals, fulfilling the biblical prophecy. And the 4th kingdom was to roll over Jerusalem in the Middle East, to be strong as iron. It was to have 2 major subdivisions, and would continue on down through time, all the way up until the second coming of Christ. Well, in history, we know that the 4th empire over the Mediterranean was the Roman Empire, and it had its eastern and western divisions, and that it has continued on down through time to revivals of the Holy Roman Empire. Even Adolf Hitler declared himself to be the 6th revival of the Holy Roman Empire. So in addition to this remarkable prophecy of world history in advance, in the book of Zechariah, written 2,400 years ago, was foretold in Ezekiel first. It foretold the return of the Israelites one day to the Holy Land. And in Zechariah, written over 2,400 years ago, the last 3 chapters foretold a time when Judah, the tribe of Judah, or the Jews, whom we know as the state of Israel today, would be in Jerusalem, and it would precipitate a world crisis that would lead to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, all you have to do is watch your daily world news, and you ought to be able to see that we are living in that time. That prophecy is being fulfilled. So, and it is with this authority then that God gave us the 10 Commandments behind me as a gift for the benefit of mankind, as a roadmap, so that we can have goodness in ourselves, and the kind of character that enables you to be high on life instead of high on physically based substances such as sex, addiction, drugs, alcohol, and the like. And this is not only a roadmap to the character of self-control, but if in striving to obey these 10 commandments, you find that they also lead you to discover that you need help to obey them. And you need God's help to obey them, and that can lead you to turn to Jesus Christ to ask for that help. Thus, the 10 Commandments lead you to surrender to God and to follow Jesus, that you may receive the gift of eternal life, to live forever in peace and joy. Well, with these messages, I'm going to ask you to watch this following important educational message, and we'll be right back.
Wonder what you'll be when you grow up, what you'll do and where you'll go. On this road you'll travel far. There's one thing that you can know for sure. Your daddy's here and will love you. Caring and protecting daddy's girl is what I'll do. When your childhood is all through, when you leave and live out on your own, your daddy's here and will love you. Caring and protecting daddy's girl is what I'll do.
Pornography is not victimless. Real men defend women and children no matter whose daughters they are. Become a defender today.
Welcome back, everyone. Our topic today is going to be the Islamic doctrine of immigration. It's a very important doctrine. Islamic immigration precedes jihad. one of the things, a red herring, we have the expression of a red herring, which is used to confuse searchers. For example, if hunters were going with hunting dogs and sniffing in search of prey, it was a trick to drag a fish like a herring across the path of these dogs, whose scent would throw the dogs off the trail of the prey they were living for. Hence the term red herring. We use it as a figure of speech to mean a deceiving tactic. Well, one of the red herrings that the Islam uses to confuse non-believers is that there is a diversity among Muslims, and so that we can't really put them under all one label. And in a sense, that may be true. Is regardless of the diversity that may exist among Muslims, there is the evidence is, as I'll show you in a minute, the facts point to the fact that overall Islam is guided by, is driven by its doctrines nonetheless. For example, let's just look around the modern world. If you look all around the world, you'll find that wherever Muslims populations exist, they're involved in conflicts with their neighbors. They're either involved in insurrections to overthrow an existing government, or they're involved in submersive Muslim immigrations and sedition, leading to set up a state within the state. For example, of insurrections, continent of Africa, and this is just some of the ones. In Africa, you have Sudan. The Muslims from Sudan have been attacking their southern neighbors. Christians in the south, they want to use Sudan as a staging ground, gateway to all of southern Africa. China even has, in the western wing of China, even has a Muslim insurrection going on. In the Philippines, have had an intense and vicious Muslim insurrection in the southern Philippines for years now. In the Mideast, of course, you have Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Lebanon, and I have some clips from the insurrection and civil war in Lebanon to show you later in the show. So be sure to stand by. I think you may find them interesting. In Asia, I mentioned Thailand, China, and the Philippines. In Eastern Europe today, Western Europe, we find, or Eastern Europe, Bosnia has been, there's been civil strife in Bosnia with the Muslims. In Chechnya, I believe that's where the Muslim terrorists attacked the school and killed over 100 school children there. But there's also Muslim subversion in Western Europe, in France, in England. The Muslims have immigrated there and have formed and when they do this, they try to form segregated communities and grow in numbers through immigration and having children, and to start forming Sharia courts in jurisdictions so that they actually have a self-segregated society, state within a state, under Sharia law, until it's large enough and strong enough to overthrow the existing governments in France and Britain. France and Britain are in grave danger from this right now. The balance of power there, and it's heading our way. The image of Islam as a religion of peace is a recent development. It originated with Columbia University professor Edward Said, who died in 2003. In his book entitled Orientalism, Said promulgated the description of Islam as a religion of peace and tolerance, and he said that loyalty to Muslims to the secular state should not be questioned. Said labeled then the critics of Islam as racist and hate mongers. This has nothing to do, he shifted the attention off of the doctrines of Islam to attacking the messenger. And this should sound familiar because it's the same mantra of American communists and Marxists and liberals used. So why is this so then? I said before that despite moderate Muslims, regardless of that, when we look around the world and we look in history, we see that Islam overall is still driven by its doctrines. So that leads to my purpose today in this program, and in some that may follow. It may take more than one program to get through this subject. We're going to come to understand the basic tactical Muslim doctrines. And by this blueprint, when we have the doctrines, we'll have the blueprint. And with the blueprint, then we'll know how to understand Islamic actions in our country and around the world better. And by understanding there's a saying about counterfeits. The best way to spot a counterfeit or a deception is to know what a real currency looks like. When you know the real thing well enough, you can spot the deception or the counterfeit right away. So it is when you understand the Muslim doctrine, the Islamic doctrines, what's guiding them, the blueprint, then you will be able to spot their red herrings right away, because deception is a very big part of the Islamic movement. Prophet Muhammad said, war is deception. A greater part of war is in deceiving your adversary than it is in military victory. And I have a good source for these doctrines. Our sources are from former Islamic scholars who have left Islam at risk to their own risk and become Christians. Here's a book that everyone should read. It's going to be a source, my main source for doctrine. It's called the Modern Day Trojan Horse, the Doctrine of Islamic Immigration. Islamic immigration is a doctrine, and it's so important that this former scholars wrote a book about it for us. It is written by Sam Solomon and the late E.L. Makdisi, former Islamic scholar. Sam Solomon was an Islamic scholar from the sands of Arabia, and now he is with us and explaining to us how they think and how they work. He was someone in a position to know. And this also goes to show having an Islamic scholar defect to become Christians shows that when God wants to call people, and he does and will call people from every area of life and induct them into his service. The other source of information you can find on our website. If you go to our website, lovethemboth.tv.com, and in the upper left-hand corner, there's 5 links up there, 5 pages represented, upper left-hand corner of the sidebar. Click Islamic terrorism. And on that page of our website, if you scroll down, you will find several videos about Islam. And you should look, they're all good, but I want to draw your attention to one, the link to the video, Islam, What the West Needs to Know. The full English learning is about midway down the page. I encourage everyone to go to our website, click on the page, Islamic Terrorism, and read the material there, especially what the West needs to know, especially the first 2 parts of that will get you established in the basics necessary to understand the basis for Islamic strategy. So I said that when we look around the world today, we find that despite diversity among Muslim people, overall, the Islamic doctrines still drive Islam. And to take a look at this doctrine, when we come back from this important educational message, I'm going to discuss with you the 4 authoritative texts from which Islamic doctrine comes. We'll be right back.
When I found out I was pregnant, I thought I would lose my job.
My boyfriend told me to choose between him and the baby.
I worried about staying in school.
I was already struggling to care for one child.
My parents told me I wasn't ready to be a mom, so I had an abortion.
I had physical problems afterwards.
I went from relationship to relationship.
I hated myself.
I started to have nightmares.
I cried when I saw a pregnant woman.
I tried to commit suicide.
Couldn't bond with the child I later had.
I tried to numb my pain with alcohol.
I struggled with depression.
I had trouble conceiving again.
You see, abortion didn't solve our problems.
It just created different ones.
Each of us thought we were the only ones struggling afterward.
Now we realize many women regret their choice.
That's why we are silent no more.
We found help and healing, and you can too. Call or go online today.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about Islamic doctrine is the roadmap for the behavior of Islam around the world, and it is based in the 4 authoritative texts of Islam. So let's take so we begin with getting a little bit of understanding, basic understanding of the authoritative text. First, there is Quran, and this information is coming from the video I asked you to watch, what the West needs to Islam, what the West needs to know. It's on our website, lovethenbothtv.com, and you click, and in the upper left, the link toward the page with Islamic terrorism on our website, and you scroll down to the middle and you can find this. Quran, what we need to know to understand the Quran is basic stuff is that it was written in 2 parts, written down in 2 parts by Muhammad the Prophet. It is considered inspired, dictated to him directly by Allah, so it is the highest authority of in Islam. And the first part was written in Mecca in the years 610 through 10-year period, 12-year period of about 610 to 622. And the second part was written several days' journey away in the Arabian city of Medina in the 10-year period from 622 through 632. This is important because the Mecca part of when Muhammad was in Mecca, he was weak. He only had a few family members, perhaps a friend or two for followers, and he was considered a political danger by the Jewish tribes there, and he was watched. So he had to get along with people more powerful than himself in Mecca, and that's where most of the peaceful verses of the Quran were written, how to get along with people under necessity who are more powerful than yourself. Finally, he had to leave there in 622 and went on the first migration to Medina, a city several days distant. And in the following 10 years after that first migration, from which we get the practice of immigration in Islam, called hijra, if you will, if the control room can bring up the lower third, hijra, H-I-J-A-R. This is the doctrine that's going to play a central role in Islam of migrating in order to set up before jihad can take place. You have to have lots of people in the foreign country. But at any rate, back to the Quran. In Medina, here, Muhammad became a powerful warlord. And this is where the violence started. This is where he laid down the foundations for Islamic society in the Shariah Law, the Shariah regulations for society. The verse of the sword in Surah, which means chapter, I believe, Surah 9:5, was written here. It says, kill the unbelievers wherever you find them, and so forth. I'm paraphrasing it. So we find then that in the later verses of the Quran that were written down in Medina and afterwards is where you find the verses of the sword, and the peaceful verses stop. Well, to reconcile this, there in Surah Let's see, Surah chapter 2, verse 106 is the principle of abrogation. And I'll paraphrase it in my own verse. It says, if verses conflict, we will give you, we will abrogate the earlier verse and give you a better verse. So here we find in the Quran the principle of abrogation established that I mentioned in the introduction to the show. It's basically used to mean that if two verses in the Quran, this authority conflict, the later verse will abrogate and supersede the earlier verse. As I said before, the Bible has no such thing because the God of the Bible says in Isaiah, he knows the end from the beginning, and he doesn't make mistakes in the Bible. Well, so that's the first thing that's helpful to understand about the Quran, is that most of the peaceful verses were written at Mecca earlier, and this is important. This helped, and the later verses contain the violence after Muhammad became a powerful warlord in Medina. This helps us understand a red herring. Deception that Islam often presents to non-believers, for they will be willing to say, but the Quran, when you're talking about jihad, importing jihad that's taking place in history and around the world today, they will say, yeah, but the Quran contains peaceful verses. Indeed it does. But the way to resolve this conflict for us is to understand that most of the peaceful verses have been abrogated by the verse of the sword. It's the last word written at Medina, and is one of the later verses of the Quran, and therefore supersedes earlier peaceful verses. So see, when you know the structure of the Quran, then you can't be fooled by the peaceful verses. It's also important to understand, one other fact important to understand about the Quran is that its chapters are not arranged in chronological order from the earlier to the last one. That's not the way. They are arranged rather from in the order of size. The largest chapters first, and the smallest chapters come in descending order till the last. So in looking in the Quran, the last chapters will not be the most recent ones written. You may find peaceful verses in the later chapters of the Quran, but they have been abrogated because they were written earlier in time. So that's an important fact to make sense out of the Quran. And remember, it's the truth that will set you free. So that's two key points about the Quran. The highest authority in Islam. There are three other authoritative texts for doctrine. One is the Sunnah. This is a record of the Prophet's actual experiences, his example. He's considered the ideal man and to be emulated by Muslims, and so the Sunnah carries a lot of weight. And then there's the Hadith. The Quran, we are told, is difficult to understand by itself. So in later centuries, Islamic scholars put together collections of traditions about the Quran used to interpret the Quran and into volumes of books called the Hadith, the traditions of the Prophet. And this is highly authoritative also. And the fourth authoritative text in Islam is the Shariah Law. These are the actual regulations for running a society, the laws by which Islamic society should be run. Technically, the command or the mission of Islam is to bring the whole world under the law of Allah, not necessarily under the Islamic religion. So technically, if the mission bringing the whole world, the mission to bring the whole world under the law of Allah would be Sharia law. And so this is why Not everyone who lives in a Muslim country doesn't have to be a Muslim, but they have to live under Sharia law. For example, one of the verses in the Quran, the Prophet commands the people to fight with the unbelievers until they will either convert to Islam, and if they won't convert, then give them the option of paying a tribute and living in subjection under Sharia law. And if they refuse those two options, then kill them with the sword. So Sharia law is the law of Islam. It's to be the laws for the society. Point number one I want to bring out, and this is what's going to help us here in our legal system in the United States, is that Sharia law is by doctrine, by definition, to be the supreme. If it's to be the law of the land, the supreme law of the land. And in the United States, this is the direct conflict with our Constitution. If you can bring up Article 6, I will tell them about Article 6 in the U.S. Constitution. And our founding fathers were smart. They put in there that this Constitution, this is what I call the Supreme Law of the Land Clause in our Constitution, Article 6. Quote, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And if we go to the second screen, the first screen tells us that Sharia law will be unconstitutional because it cannot be the supreme law of the land under our Constitution. So we have a legitimate legal weapon for banning Sharia law. But let us go on in screen 2. Moreover, and the judges of talking about the Constitution now, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, referring to the Constitution and the Supreme Law of the Land Clause. Anything in this Constitution or the laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. So this is what outlaws judicial activism, by the way. Roe versus Wade, this applies to abortion too. Roe versus Wade is an illegal, unconstitutional ruling because it violates the Supreme Law of the Land Clause. There are no judicial rulings, edicts, opinions are not included either in the Supreme Law of the land. And so we are in violation of our own Constitution as long as we have Roe versus Wade also. But in particular, since the judges have to be bound by the U.S. Constitution and its supreme law, there cannot be Sharia compliance. These are judicial systems or other systems in which the supreme law is Sharia. This will be unconstitutional. There cannot be Sharia courts because in those courts they get to be the supreme. They function as the supreme law of the land. Now, Islam is clever about this. They will come in and say, well, we have arbitration laws. We can set up. How about letting the Muslims arbitrate their family matters under under Sharia law, under your arbitration laws? But again, the arbitration law cannot allow them to do that because Sharia compliance would trump the U.S. Constitution. And there's some other practical reasons why that won't work too. Which I guess I won't get into right now. This will have to do more shows on this. One argument, another red herring I've heard recently made by the Imam Rauf, who's advocating the mosque to be established at the World Trade Center. He's already studying this. And he says, well, only 10% of Sharia law violates the U.S. Constitution. Well, we'll see because how that plays out in our courts. Because number one, Sharia law is a indivisible law. By Islamic doctrine, by definition, it can't be separated. The same law that forbids eating pork or unclean meat in Sharia law also permits the stoning of women. And these, by Islamic law, can't be separated. So we'll see how this plays out. Sharia law also is very violates the U.S. criminal law in many, many ways. Honor killings of women, honor murders of women are permissible in Sharia law. They're not permissible in American criminal law. Murdering of gays is not permissible in American criminal law. It is permissible and is done under Islamic Sharia law. So you liberals out there who want to get rid of the Constitution, remember that you need to realize it is the thing that is protecting you. Unbelievers in Islam can be executed under Sharia law. They cannot be under the U.S. Constitution. The polygamy, having many wives, is lawful in Sharia law. It violates U.S. State laws on marriage. The pedophilia, having sex and adults with children, is lawful. Marriage between grown men and 9-year-old girls is lawful under Sharia law. I've seen pictures of it on the internet. It violates our pedophilia laws. Also, it violates U.S. constitutional principles. Sharia law does. It does not give due process to everybody. It denies equal protection to men and women. It doesn't treat them the same under the law. Sharia law doesn't. This violates our Constitution, which insists on equal protection for men and women and all people under the law. In rape cases, for example, the Muslims, Islamic law is notorious in Islamic countries for stoning the woman who was raped together and letting the male rapist go free. Sharia also will violate stonings and floggings to death, and beheadings will violate a cruel and unusual punishment clause of our United States Constitution. So there are many, many reasons why Sharia law will be unconstitutional in the United States. But some will say, and here's a red herring, then you'll hear this argument, but a red herring, that Islam is protected by freedom of religion. Well, let's use a little common sense here. Sharia law cannot be protected, as I'm showing, by freedom of religion. The United States Constitution is not a suicide pact. The First Amendment guaranteeing freedom of religion is not a suicide pact. So Sharia law cannot be protected by freedom of religion. Therefore, Sharia courts and Sharia compliance, which are all part of this inseparable, indivisible law called Sharia law, can probably be excluded too under our legal system. That brings us, now I've been talking about red herrings, and how these are things used to throw us off the track and confuse non-believers. That brings there's a doctrine for this. It's called taqiyya. If you can bring the taqiyya lower third up on the screen, I'll explain this briefly as we're running down on time. Taqiyya is the al-taqiyya or taqiyya means, it's a word meaning prevention. It's actually Islamic doctrine that is permissible and encouraged to lie in order to defend Islam. This is why you will may see on the internet news clips of Islamic leaders such as Yasser Arafat would speak peace to Western audiences, and then he was found speaking jihad in Arab to the Arab audiences, because they are permitted to lie to defend Islam and throw the opponents of Islam, try to confuse the opponents of Islam. In this connection, I'll give you an example. Muslims, when they're small in numbers and don't have much power, they'll do like Muhammad did in Mecca when he was weak, and be good neighbors and very peaceful. But this can be deceiving. It is not necessarily sincere. For example, I have a friend whose sister lives in Toronto in a housing project up there, which is basically a Muslim housing project. And their children play with the Muslim children. And the Muslim children talk. The Muslim children tell the Christian children, you're good Christians. We won't kill you because you're good Christians. We won't kill you. So the children, the Muslim children, are being taught this at home. The Ground Zero Mosque provided another example of this Muslim staple of deception called taqiyya. The mosque was presented as a gesture of reconciliation, but in reality, but it became evident that they would not move the mosque. These people hated us. They would not move the mosque to respect the 3,000 Americans who died deaths at Ground Zero. These people took the hit for you and me. Imam Rauf's associations were traced back to the Muslim Brotherhood. This is was formed approximately 1927-28. It's the parent of Muslim terrorist organizations around the world. We have to test the leaders of Islamic centers and mosques in every city, including Pittsburgh, by tracing their associations, tracing their associations to terrorist organizations. Another test is they ask if they ask these leaders in your town, in Pittsburgh here, in New York, or wherever, if these leaders in mosques, if they will condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization, to see if they give you a straight answer. And a third test is to trace the money trail. There's a tremendous amount of money flowing from Saudi Arabia and radical Islamist countries back into this country and through terrorist organizations. If we can go to the tape roll, the supplementary tape roll number 1 on taqiyya in Lebanon.
The issue of terrorism is something very, very close to me because I have experienced it personally. I am not only an expert like the many experts who study it 16 hours a day and live and work it 16 hours a day, but I am someone who was personally affected by it. I come from Lebanon. Many people do not realize that Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. When people think of the Middle East, they think all the people in the Middle East are Muslims, with the exception of the state of Israel. Not necessarily true. Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. When we got our independence from France, the majority were Christians, the Muslims were the minority. We were the descendants of the Phoenicians. We were good in business. We focused on building the country. And because we had Judeo-Christian values, we were multicultural. We were open-minded. We were fair. We were tolerant. We had an open border policy. We welcomed everybody into our country. The Muslims used to send their children from all around the surrounding Arabic countries to study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Arabic world. They would graduate. They would stay and work in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East and the Arabic world, even though we did not have any oil. Sadly, all that began to change as the Christians started shrinking and the Muslims started growing. By 1970, the Muslims had become the majority. And we, being Christian and being fair-minded and open and tolerant and multicultural and all of that good stuff, we welcomed the Palestinians into our country. We were the only Middle Eastern country, the only Christian country in the Middle East that took in a third wave of Palestinian refugees when King Hussein kicked them out of Jordan and they came into Lebanon. Most of them were Muslims. They put their heads together with the Muslims in Lebanon, and that's what tipped the scale. They became the majority, they started working together, and they declared war on the Christians. Because we could not believe that people who lived amongst us, that our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues could turn against us in a heartbeat once the declaration of Allahu Akbar, the Islamic call to prayer, was called.
That video that you just saw was actually a series of clips by Bridget Gabriel, who grew up and lived through the Muslim takeover of Lebanon. I want to draw your attention to the last statement she made. She said, they could not believe when their people who had been their friends and neighbors turned against them when the Islamic call for victory went out. There were people that they knew, Muslims that they lived with, went to school with, worked with, who never let on that they would turn against them, but they did. This is taqiyya, Muslims deceiving non-believers in order to advance Islam. Now, I am not saying every moderate Muslim would do that, but moderate Muslims have you have put yourself in a difficult position by being in the Islamic religion. It's a religion by being in a religion with taqiyya, where the truth cannot be guaranteed, because we never know when you're telling the truth. So the remedy to that is for moderate Muslims to come out of Islam and come to the religion of truth, and that is Christianity and through Jesus Christ. Instead of the First Amendment, freedom of religion protecting Shariah law, we need freedom of religion in this country to protect Islams who want to leave Islam instead of being held by force into it, to stay into it. They're afraid to leave it. So that's what we have to do with freedom of religion. Bridget Gabriel's video is posted on the Islamic Terror page of our website, lovethenbothtv.com. I received a comment on YouTube concerning her video, saying that I was hiding behind Bridget because I was using her video instead of using her video, putting her out front. My response to this is that I don't need anyone to hide behind. I don't need anyone to protect me. I'm a veteran of the U.S. military in the combat arms and an expert marksman. So I believe we're running out of time. This is a big subject. I intend to do some more programs in order to cover it, the basic doctrines, which are the blueprint for how Islam behaves in the world. We're continuing to make shows, so see you next time.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, and I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows dim, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand. Take my hand, precious Lord.